Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Labour, the Committee Chairman. I'm going to do the usual administration first and then I will explain the running order of tonight's meeting and how the meeting will work. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
Apologies received from Councillor Dudko with Councillor Yarrow substituting and Councillor Catra with Councillor Duncan substituting.
Any declarations of interest in matters coming for tonight's meeting? No. The minutes of the meeting 25th of October were in your bundle. Can I take those as accurate? Thank you. There are no matters notified in advance or as urgent. We have petition items 6, 7 and 8 and then non-petition items 9 to 13. And I know that 13 needs some figure work to go with it. We've got that, have we? Good. There are then 3 enforcement reports. The enforcement reports are Part 2 items and are taken in private and therefore will not figure on the Council's YouTube site. This meeting is being broadcast on the YouTube site. The camera faces this way and faces committee members, so those in the audience don't figure on it. If you are presenting tonight at a petition, you will be on the video recording when it goes out. Can I also ask, please, that everybody speaks clearly into their microphones? That includes officers and councillors as well as petitioners. For those items with a petition, bearing in mind this is not a public meeting, it's a meeting held in public. The rights to address us are in the Council's constitution, they're in the committee papers, and I will summarise them now. You have 5 minutes to do your petition. You get 4 minutes green, 1 minute amber, and when it gets to red we will stop you. Anyone who presents a petition can be asked questions by members. The fact they don't ask you a question, don't worry about it. That means they've understood the point you have made. On any of the petition items, so that's 6, 7 and 8, regardless of whether the petitioner presents, the applicant or their agent is entitled to present. Ward councillors are entitled to talk on any matter, although I am not aware that any are planning to do so tonight. I'll do a quick bit of health and safety. We're not expecting a fire alarm, so if the fire alarm does go, we're treating it as real, and the principal exits are behind me here, and that door there. The normal, quickest way out of this building would be out of the door through the next set of double doors and down the spiral staircase. Takes you out to the side of the building, and that is the normal way we would head out. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are switched off or at least silent, in particular those around me, because those are the ones that normally go off. There are residents' feedback forms, which Democratic Services, they are the orange. Are they orange? They are orange tonight. On your chairs, and if you would like to provide Democratic Services with feedback on tonight's meeting, you're entirely welcome to do so. The voting members of committee tonight, I only get a vote if they can't make their minds up, and they've done that once to me in the last 8 years. So we'll see what happens tonight. So other than that, I don't vote. I'll start down at my far right with Councillor Graham, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Yarrow, Councillor Morgan, and then I've got Councillor Oswald, Councillor Dillon and Councillor Duncan. Peter Loveday is our highway engineer tonight. Edward Otang is presenting the applications. James Roger, the head of planning, will offer us planning advice. Anisha is our clerk, and Roisin Hogan is our planning lawyer. That is all the introductions done. I'm starting first, please, with item 6, which is Alders Hall and Wetherby House, Green Lane, Northwood. Edward, when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair, members. Thank you, Chair. Item 6 involves basically 2 buildings. One is modern in form, and the other is an Edwardian arts and crafts style structure. I'll take you through the presentation, members. Item 6. Sorry, if I can get this working. Sorry. You've got the location plan. And you have the constraints plan showing the site. Another location plan. The proposed site plan. Site plan as proposed, option B. Existing floor plans and elevations. And this is actually showing the modern structure, which is Wetherby House. Proposed floor plan and elevations. Existing ground floor plan. Existing first floor plan. Existing second floor plan. Existing elevations. This is actually the existing elevations for Alders Hall and not Wetherby House. So apologies, the notes are not clear. And this is the proposed ground floor plan. Proposed first floor plan. Proposed second floor plan. And the proposed elevations. Again, we're looking at Alders Hall. An aerial view of the subject site. And this is Wetherby House. Another view of Wetherby House showing parts of its parking area to the front. And this is Alders Hall, the wooden building in the arts and crafts style, with accommodation in the roof space. It has a lovely pond to its rear and a fountain. That's part of the rear showing where the pond is. Another view of the rear. Further views of the garden area. And this is a wider view of the rear with the pond. Side view. And this is a view of the rear again, rear and side. We've got side. Elements of the parking around the area. And this is the approach to Alders Hall. Street view. Somewhat, the buildings are obscured by the natural vegetation screening there. Chair and members, the officer recommendation is that the application be approved. Effectively, what you have is a change of use for Alders Hall from a C1 residential to a Class D1, a preschool nursery with associated parking. Wetherby House is a change of use from D1 preschool nursery to a C3 residential. The key issues for Alders Hall members is the proposed use, that's the preschool nursery, an alternative and suitable use to its original residential use. And does it preserve this vacant building, and does it then avoid any adverse impact on the free flow of traffic? And on the issues of traffic and free flow, I will defer to my colleague, Mr. Peter Loveday. Critical also is that the two proposals, do they have any adverse impact on residential amenity? With Wetherby House, members, the key issues there is whether, again, the change of use proposed, which doesn't involve any alterations to the external fabric of the building, only minimal changes to the front of the area, whether, again, that is a suitable alternative use. Both buildings, Chair and members, are vacant and they're not in use. And the officer's view is that the proposals effectively allow for the long-term survival of these two structures. And the recommendation is that the application be approved. Thank you, Chair. I'll defer to my colleague Peter to talk a little bit more on the transport.
Thanks, Edward. Members, Chairman, you will remember that this application or a similar application was before you previously and was refused on highway and safety grounds. The applicant has resubmitted a layout plan whereby the existing arrangement on the Alders Hall property now becomes a set-down area for the nursery, and staff car parking is offered at the nearby 142 space public car park. You will see from the drawing that Edward proposed early on in the group of documents that there was an option B plan, which I think he's going to go through to now. And we did receive an option A document, and that basically removed much of the vegetation on the front of the property. Myself and the landscape architect could see that there were issues relating to removing all that vegetation, and we spoke with the applicant and came up with a compromise whereby 11 car parking spaces were provided as shown on that particular drawing, and much of the vegetation was retained. I think that's really all I want to point out at this stage.
Okay, thank you. We have a petition on this one. Dennis Sayre, you'd like to... If you press the button on the middle of the microphone, it will light up, and then we'll start the timer as you begin to talk.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Sayre, and I am a resident of the Glen Northwood, and I have been requested to speak to you on behalf of a large number of local petitioners. The Glen is almost directly opposite Alders House, so we all have an active interest in the outcome of this committee meeting. As you'll already be aware, this application is the second one in 7 months, and it is almost the same as the first refused application. Mostly, but not exclusively, our objection to all based on traffic. In the Design and Access Statement, item 507 states that the majority of parents will arrive by foot or public transport without any even close satisfactory verification. Even the Appendix B figures deny this. A statement is made that there will be 2 access points, but this is for the total site. For the nursery school, there is still only 1 rather narrow access point, and the latest site plan of 20th of October shows that access to the recently reduced 3 parking spaces, now right by the entrance, are also inhibited by 2 TPO'd trees. To include another 3 spaces at the rear of the building, and then to quote also that 12 spaces will be available, is misleading, confusing and untrue. Parents are unlikely to use these rear spaces. It's a red herring, and they have no possible relevance to usable drop-off pick-up areas. And the 12 spaces now being quoted, the figures on the 20th of October plan total 11, not 12. Traffic statement item 2.3, referring to parking opposite the site entrance in Green Lane, is totally wrong. There is no parking at all there of any sort outside the site or across the road, as the London Borough of Hillingdon have removed any provision to park and double yellow lined the entire area. Accident figures may mean what you want them to mean to create a false point, minimizing the accident figures to only 2 in 100 yards, whereas the figure is actually 11 in 400 yards, all on the same road, Green Lane, is deliberately misleading. And why does one want to read traffic figures for Islington, Exeter, Tower Hamlets and even southwest Devon? There obviously weren't any local figures available, so let's grab anyone we can to fit our argument. Seems to be the order of the day. Traffic Statement 4.5 states that only 10 spaces are needed for the quantity of 104 pupils. This was based on the Weatherby Montessori School traffic data for a selected 30 minutes at 5 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. of just 6 cars and extrapolated to somehow achieve the number of 10 car parking spaces for Alders House. But employ a much more suitable and stated traffic figure of 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., which shows 30 cars, then the extrapolated figure increases to 15 spaces needed. The aerial photos of the original school site would lead you to think that there have been an excess of parking spaces there. Another accidental error. The aerial east and west photos show lots of parking spaces, but they are all for the London School of Theology next door. The narrow two-way access roadway to drop off and pick up pupils still remains, but now cars in the 3 spaces squeezed in and nearest to Green Lane will be required to reverse into approaching cars at least once for every vehicle movement. The current 300 yards long morning traffic queues will have to be crossed by a large percentage of the cars entering the site and crossed again to get off, and I fear that traffic chaos will follow. There are 5 schools within 400 yards of the site, and the total number of pupils exceeding 2,000, with all the attendant traffic in the morning and the same amount in the afternoon. As before, there will be up to 104 cars in the morning and up to 104 cars in the afternoon, which will result in a dreadful effect on the environment and on the ambience of the area, and there will be traffic turmoil every morning and evening. Now, have the reasons for rejecting the previous application been answered by this new application? I would strongly suggest the answer is a resounding no, and the same result should be arrived at here, a total rejection of the application. I would ask the committee not to be deceived by this smoke and mirrors and unnecessary application, and to refuse it, please. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
No, it's all right. You can leave it there for now because the next one's going to need it. Brian Mullen.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The applicant has gone further than merely listening to the concerns expressed by members at the August Planning Committee. The project team has critically analysed the debate and worked with officers to resolve any reasonable concerns. The proposals are for a 104-space nursery on a site which until recently accommodated a 60-space nursery, and according to Ofsted's current space standards, has the capacity to hold 88 pupils. The committee should be cautioned about settling upon a lower figure, as it serves only to underplay a lawful fallback position available to the applicant. This fallback position is important to consideration of the current application. The focus of the Planning Committee members' concerns was that parents would not utilise the Green Lane car park for pick-up and drop-off, as it is 135 metres from the site. It was suggested that parents would instead park illegally. The committee also raised concerns that staff would park on street, causing highway safety issues. Fundamental errors were made during the August meeting. Members were led to believe that the applicant had sought to make last-minute changes to the proposals to allow under-twos to be dropped off on site. This wasn't the case, as it was discussed at length with officers throughout the course of the application. Members were informed that Green Lane car park could not be utilised for parking for longer than 2 hours. This is incorrect. Members were also told that there was no free parking on site. There's half-hour parking on site. This is also incorrect. The reason for refusal states that the proposal fails to have regard to existing highway safety and pedestrian safety concerns. A review of the highway safety data for the area, the immediate vicinity, clearly illustrates that there was no adverse safety record in the vicinity of the site arising from the operation of the site as a nursery. The reason for refusal suggests that the area has considerable parking pressure. This again is incorrect. None of the survey evidence indicates this to be the case. Survey data has been presented which clearly illustrates a surplus of parking capacity in the vicinity of the site, which is entirely contrary to the reason for refusal on the the current appeal. The proposals include a commitment to planning conditions which will secure a travel plan and drop-off pick-up management plan consistent with that provided for and approved by the Council for the nearby Cornerways Nursery, which operates with a combination of on and off-site parking as per the proposals before you tonight. The previous application was refused due to concerns relating to a perceived lack of pick-up and drop-off spaces and the belief that Green Lane car park would not be utilised, but the application directly responds to members' concerns by providing 11 spaces on site. We did work with officers during the course of the application due to concerns about trees. Parking demand has been calculated by utilising the week of survey data provided from the Montessori nursery, which previously operated on site. So that's where the survey data came from. And increasing the level of demand pro rata for the proposed scheme based upon the child numbers. Parking demand associated with Montessori nursery was recorded over a 1-week period and peaked at 6 vehicles for a roll of 58 children. Simply increasing the parking demand in proportion with the proposed increase in child numbers, which is a factor of 1.79, indicates a peak level demand of 10.74 vehicles, which we have rounded up to 11, and there are 11 spaces provided on site tonight. It's a robust methodology, providing an overestimate of parking demand. The proposed nursery will open 1 hour earlier than Montessori, which will result in some drop-off activity being earlier in the morning, and hence a lower peak between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. The proposals before you therefore include more than adequate on-site parking to accommodate all pick-up and drop-off activity. Staff will not be permitted to park on the site and will be advised to utilise the Green Lane car park, which allows for parking all day and which is more than sufficient spare capacity. This will be enshrined in the travel plan controlled by condition. The London Preschool will be the only nursery operating from 7 to 7 and open 51 weeks of the year. This means there's no glut of arrivals and departures during peak hours. We've currently got 92 inquiries from members of the public for use of the facility, and we're confident that the London Preschool can operate responsibly and safely as a good neighbour to local residents and be a valuable asset to extending the choice and quality of education provisioned within the borough. I thank you and I welcome any questions.
Do members have any? Councillor Flynn?
Yeah, I'm just interested to get a sense. You talk about 104 places, and you do mention that the hours are 7 to 7, which is quite long hours. In my experience, Green Lane gets particularly congested probably around 8 o'clock in the morning and around 5 o'clock in the evening rush hour. Have you got any estimates of how many children you feel are going to be dropped off sort of 7 till 8 in the morning and 6 till 7 sort of outside rush hour times, because that might help stagger the traffic situation a little bit?
Yeah, there is a majority of, not the whole majority. The stretch is between 7 and 10 o'clock for drop off, and the stretch for pick up is between 5 and 7. The appeal of the London Preschool and the model that they run is for parents who work and parents who spend a long time in the office. So you tend to get people arriving early, dropping off the kids and coming back late. And that might include parents who, want to attend the gym perhaps before or after work. So it provides that flexibility, and there isn't any other model in the London market that provides those hours of operation, and that's where the London Preschool succeeds. It's comparable to Waitrose in the retail market, which admittedly has been. I don't have the numbers here. I mean, the transport assessment will have numbers comparable. There was talk of.
I think we're going to get the level of detail you'll see.
Level of forensic detail.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. We're going round the point, so I'll halt it there if I might. Anybody else got any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much. If you turn the microphone off for me, that would be helpful. There are no ward councillors on this one, so I'll open it up. Councillor Higgins.
What a lovely building. lovely place to be educated. I think it's very nice, but this doesn't stack up.
I was going to say, can we come down to traffic, because that's where we're going to go fairly quickly.
The problem here is that I know we're dealing with the application we have before us, but we have had one similar to this proposal, and we got it right in a certain extent that this is backwards, this one. So I can't really, and to me, the problem is that we have the spaces, we have no traffic, we have a traffic plan that's been told to us, but we don't see it, so I can't see how the movement of the vehicles will go in and out. I can see loads of problems that the petitioner has said about those 3 spaces. I mean, if those spaces were for staff, I could actually go for this. I think the other way that you have the car park up the road, half an hour, they can pick the kids up, take them across, and it's all done and dusted. This doesn't stack for me. I'm afraid I'll have to.
Could I just clarify, councillor, just so I'm clear on this one and we don't get confused as we move along? Are you suggesting that you would accept an application, because it's perfectly possible to modify the way we use the spaces in condition in a moment, are you suggesting an application that had 8 nursery spaces would be acceptable to you, and that the other 3 used for staff, because that's just another way of using the same spaces?
Yeah, through you, Chairman. I would actually have it that the parking on site is just for staff, not for any drop off at all. That would make more sense.
We did last
No, I
time
know,
round.
but every horse is for a different course, and the issue is that there is a nightmare. I mean, I have to go through the road on a regular basis.
All right.
So I just think that if that could, I mean, I'm putting it out there because we did the same thing for the last.
I know where we got to on the last one.
Yeah, I would. If those spaces were for staff only, I wouldn't have.
Let me just let the debate flow, because obviously that may at the moment that wouldn't be a deal breaker in terms of the highways, because there is a condition on how these spaces can be used, and we can work that any way we want. So let's see what anybody else has got. Councillor Dillon.
So I disagree completely with what Councillor Higgins said. Just to be consistent with what I said last time. My issue with this new plan is so you have 3 spaces at the front, but you have 8 at the back and 1.
It's the other way around.
There you go.
It's 3 at the back and 8 at the front.
Okay, so now
I do read the plans.
You're right now, Jason.
You want to start again?
I'm glad I did that on YouTube.
Well, these things are there for forever.
So I'll just leave it at that. I disagree with Councillor Higgins.
Okay, thank you for that. Disagreeing with the application in total then?
No, I'm not. I think it's better.
You think this is better? Okay, fair enough. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I still do actually have issues with this. The actual width of the service road, or the road going up for the car parking spaces, how wide is that? It's very difficult to see on these plans. It's effectively going to be a 2-way drive, and I don't think it's actually wide enough for 2-flow traffic.
Bring the highway engineer in to help us with that one. Could we just turn your microphone on, please?
Thanks. We've got an access road which is approximately 5 metres wide, between 2 constraints. To give you some idea, Manual for Streets says that you can have an access road on a housing estate at 4.6 metres. So we've got an access road there which is probably no narrower than some of the access roads on a housing estate.
Okay. Well, that's a fair answer. Does that there is a pinch point, isn't there, around that fire escape?
Yep.
How wide is that?
That's very narrow. That's about 2.8 metres, I think.
So that's one car only at that point?
Yeah.
Right, okay. As long as I just want to be totally clear in case we get confused. Does that help you, Councillor? With your microphone on, please.
Knowing that this is going to be young children being walked up from the car to the entrance of the nursery, to quote 4.6 on a housing estate, I don't think helps us here, because we are talking about lots of children walking up there, and 5.6
5 metres width is really not wide enough for 2 Chelsea tractors to go side by side.
Reservation. Anybody else going to come in on this one? Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Graham, please.
Yeah, I'm slightly torn on this, Mr. Chairman. I mean, from a public policy perspective, one always wants to see more of these sort of facilities, and we heard from the applicant that there's a real demand for this in that area. But we also heard from the petitioner that there are actually a very large number of nurseries and schools within a very close proximity to this site. And I think my concern really is the sheer number of places that we're talking about here. 104, that seems a lot bigger than most nurseries in the area. And just the sheer volume of vehicle movements that I think will be generated from 104 children every single day. And I would worry about the pressure, to be honest, if Councillor Higgins' suggestion that there was no parking on site for anyone other than staff. I'd worry about the congestion on the Green Lane car park, because with that number of vehicle movements, there'd barely be any spaces left, I think. And the traffic, as we all know, if you know that part of the borough on Green Lane at peak hours, is pretty intense. So to me, it comes down to the number of places. If it was sort of 70 or 80, I think it might be manageable with 11 spaces. But 104, that's a lot bigger than most nurseries. So that's my main concern.
Okay, Councillor Graham, then Councillor Oswald, then Councillor Duncan.
Yes, Chairman. Actually, Councillor Flynn covered almost all the points I was going to raise. I mean, it was interesting to hear that the applicant was saying that although there are going to be many more movements, it's going to start earlier and finish later. And to that extent, that's a good thing. But I'm inclined to agree with what Councillor Flynn has said, that a lesser number of children on the site would appeal to me much more than the present 104.
To consider, obviously, what is before us, and that is the larger number, unfortunately. Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, a roadway of 5 metres, I would have thought that would have been fine. I'm not totally disagreeing with you, Councillor Morgan, but I think that should be fine. And it's off-road, because it's on the site, so it's not actually on the public highway, and I think that people would probably deal with that width reasonably. You would hope so anyway. We don't want to bash our vehicles up, do we? So, and obviously, if there are children walking up and down, well, yeah, that is an issue as well. And as for 104 children, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Duncan. Duncan about that. I don't know about this. I know Green Lane is a busy road. I mean, I'm not as familiar with it as Northwood councillors, obviously, because I'm not a councillor there, but I know it's a busy road and it's difficult, but this is a better application than the previous one, I think, Chairman, anyway. So with that, I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Duncan first, because she had already indicated. Oh, and then Councillor Yarrow wants to come in. I'll hold your recommendation for a moment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not normally a member of this committee, so I'm afraid I was not present when this was heard before, and did not have the benefit of hearing members' discussion at that time. The thing that concerns me is very much the point that Councillor Morgan raised as well, I think, as well as Councillor Flynn. We're talking about 104 vehicles, because let's face it, 104 children are going to be arriving mostly in around 104 vehicles. Yes, maybe there will be some people who will walk. What will happen in poor weather? I doubt that they will be walking. These are young children, and they won't be walking great distances. So you could have the potential of 104 vehicles arriving between 7 and 9 o'clock. So that's just over a minute each. Yes, it may be less than that, but let's look at the worst case scenario, which we have to. So in just over a minute or a minute and a half, whatever it is, you could have a vehicle arriving at a busy time of day. I accept that those arriving at 7 o'clock, yes, there's going to be less traffic. They're going to come in, they're going to manoeuvre particularly in the 3 vehicles at the rear. And what I'm concerned about is at the pinch point, I think we were told this is 2.8. A car parking space is 2.4 wide. So that leaves a very small margin, and you're going to have a parent holding a young child. Are they going to be able to fit into 0.4 of a space? Because there is no footpath here. And when you're talking about the movement of very young children, I mean, I would love this facility to be there because I do support this. I mean, our grandson went to a wonderful nursery. It was such a benefit to him, and you know, they really are in any community. But I just feel very concerned about the movement of a large number of small children when the parking and vehicular movement is not so straightforward. I think if people were just coming in and there were spaces here, they were going out, okay, we could consider that. Here we're looking at a more tortuous route with a narrow pinch point, and there are going to be people who park there and then would come down, I think, unless someone can tell me that there's a rear entrance to this.
Don't believe there is.
They're going to be coming down as other vehicles coming in and not being able to
I think
stop
we
here.
understand that issue. Can I just take Councillor Yarrow, and I want to bring the highways engineer back in just to wrap this up.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I really fundamentally agree with what Councillor Duncan has said. You've taken some of my thoughts and presented them. I'm worried about the fact that when people turn in to deliver their child to the school, they won't initially go for the 3 early spaces. They want to get as close to the entrance as is possible, so they will turn into the larger area. If it's full, they then have to turn out of that area and come back down again to see if there's now any space left in the other 3. So there is congestion there, and there is a problem of that, there's no doubt. It would be nice if we had a travel plan, but we have to make these decisions without a travel plan because that's the nature of the beast. I am worried about it, and to the extent that the solution to the problem would seem to be to go back on what was said before. And like you, Councillor Duncan, I wasn't at that meeting, and I'm not a member of this committee, so I don't know what was said before. But the business about child safety and getting children to school will be answered if they all parked at Green Lane. But I know that last time it was said that that was not an option, right? And so the option in front of us is this acceptable? And I'm coming more onto the way of thinking that it is not.
Okay. Can I just ask, please, do you want to come back in on the highways?
Yeah.
Because that's where we are.
Yep.
We're not going anywhere else, so we might as well go back to you.
There's perhaps I can put some numbers to some of the thoughts that the members had. From the information that was provided to us by the applicant, the traffic generation on an hourly basis in the morning peak was 49 vehicles in and 49 vehicles out. Obviously, the afternoon peak is significantly less, 30 vehicles in, 30 vehicles out. That constitutes something in the region of 21 in, 21 out, more than the previous nursery that operated on the site. And then we haven't discounted the traffic that was already in the use that currently exists. So that gives you some indication of how the site would tick over. From my perspective, yes, it is a congested site. Yes, there are some turning, manoeuvring issues, but I mean, we've all had children with nurseries and whatever. Somehow you tend to make these things work, and I just think that the option of what we have before us is far better to save some of the vegetation and have the next application, which would come to us with virtually nothing left on the site but the 2 or 3 TPO trees. And as I say, yes, Green Lane is a classified road. Yes, it's busy. Yes, there's you've just come out of a 20 mile an hour zone through just near Northwood Station. There is a pedestrian crossing outside, bus stops. It's not exactly, the travel speeds along that road are not particularly high. The accident record, 2 in the last 5 years I had between Northwood Station and the Green Lane traffic lights in Harmondsworth Road. So, put some numbers to some of the ideas. I hope that's been of help. I'll leave it there.
Okay, Councillor Higgins.
I tried to come up with a solution, not because I'm being awkward, but the problem for me was that knowing the road and living quite close to it, is the in and out movement. Now, if you can't get 2 cars coming in and out at the same time, then it doesn't work. So I'm going to...
The highways officer saying you can.
No, and the problem is what you're going to do with stacking traffic. I mean, it's a narrow road, so you've got cars coming in and cars can't get out because it's so narrow, so they're waiting on the high road to enter the premises. So that's going to cause traffic problems anyway. Then if someone is coming from the other way and then wants to turn in, that's going to cause even more traffic problems. Then you've got the buses come down there, which is you can't get around the buses if you want to. It's impossible. So the issue for this is, my issue is that how would this work? The only way it would work if you made the site as only for staff. If that cannot be one of the options that couldn't come forward and we couldn't come to an agreement on that, then I would go with the officers a refusal for this application because on the traffic, and I would take my chances with the inspector. So.
Planning for some comment?
Just regarding that issue of the planning inspectorate, so because this is a nursery proposal and because there is some form of fallback position, my view is the inspector is going to try and find a way of approving it. And therefore, if committee tonight were to find an acceptable solution, even if it's altering 3 spaces at the rear or doing some slightly different alternative to what's before them, the benefit of that is it means that Hillingdon Council is deciding what's an appropriate scheme rather than a planning inspector from Bristol that may not know Northwood so well. That would be my contribution.
Thank you. That is helpful, as always, James. So, Councillor Higgins, can I explore your suggestion a little? Which rather departs from where we were last time, I seem to remember, but nurseries in Northwood we seem to have a bit of toing and froing before we get to an answer. Yeah, just a bit. It seems to be the way the world works. Let's just explore. We have and I'm not sure if it will get seconded and approved, a proposal for the officer scheme, but just let's explore your suggestion for a moment, that effectively we flip this. Effectively you use the parking on site for staff, so it's one in and it stays, so it cuts in and out movements down, and effectively parents are going to have to park in the Green Lane car park and walk. That's what we're saying. We're assuming they won't park illegally on double yellow lines, but you get a ticket if you do that. So you have to assume people observe the traffic regulations. That would be good. So the parents then have to walk from the Green Lane car park, in essence. Well, I'm just summarising your proposal. Hopefully I've got it correct. I'm not suggesting whether it's appropriate or not. I'm just trying to pick up a suggestion. Does anybody want to add any further comment to that, see if that has any mileage? Councillor Dillon.
I don't think it has any mileage. Sorry to say that. I have the plans the right way up. I'm sitting the right way round, and I'm talking to the right. You've got it all correct. So far I'm all right. The argument we had last time was the car park is in Green Lane.
Green Lane.
If it's raining, if it's cold, and it's dark, you're not going to walk your kids to, and you're not going to bring them back to the car park. You're inclined to drop and go. Okay? On a double yellow line, you're allowed 5 minutes before you get a ticket. It's the truth, because I've got an issue in my ward, and you can't ticket them until...
You can't manage to get them ticketed.
No, you can't.
You
have to allow them 5 minutes. So that is going to cause you a traffic issue. Right? People will become aware of that, and they will park, and people will follow and keep doing that. This is a better scheme, but on listening to the arguments, it's borderline. On balance, for me, it would be better if it was a drop and go and we had a point of entry and a point of exit, which would mean possibly losing the vegetation, which you don't want to do. So I'm stuck, to be honest with you. I don't like it, this current scheme. It's better.
It's an improvement on where we were.
Yeah,
it's 6 spaces better, so it's an improvement on where we were. But are you likely to go? I'm going to have to put this to a vote in a minute to take us forward, I think.
I would reluctantly second it.
Okay, that's good. That gives me somewhere to go. Councillor Flynn, I'll take your contribution, then I'm going to put this to the vote and see what the vote, because there's all sorts of versions of this.
I was just merely going to say, Chairman, that Councillor Higgins' proposal, I think we've got to be conscious here that 37 staff as well. Okay, not all of them are going to be travelling by car, but a fair number will be, and 11 car parking spaces. You're still going to be left with probably 15 or so staff who are looking to park, and they'll be parking all day. So that car park though in Green Lane is going to get very full very quickly, and I'm conscious we've got other nurseries in the vicinity as well. So my concerns keep coming back to the numbers. If it was 70 or 80, then I'd be a lot more relaxed.
I sense members' concerns. I also sense members are, to a degree, sitting on the fence. So I'm going to take them off the fence, if I might. One additional contribution quickly, because I want to.
Could one of these spaces be disabled?
Well,
because we've got to provide for that.
I don't see that being a problem if that's where we go. But can I just, James, do you want to come in?
I was just a point I was holding back to see which way members might vote. But if members are approving this, condition 9, I'd seek delegated authority to do some minor changes to the condition in conjunction with the council's listed buildings officer. But that obviously the very minor internal changes to the building are not the key issue before committee. But if members could just note that in any recommendation.
The other thing just comes into my head very quickly is there space to make one a disabled space? There is. Okay, so that I think we could add to this. Okay, it's been proposed, it's been seconded. The head of planning's asked us some delegation on item 9, and we'd make one of the spaces disabled. So all those in favour, please show, and then I'll see what I've got. I've got 1, 2. All those against, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that gives me a fair steer, but we have to test it one way or the other. We don't believe, I'm not getting any great traction on Councillor Higgins' suggestion. I'm not picking up members on either side of me rushing forward. Are you going to try it again? One last time?
The reason I'm trying to say this is that let's be sensible about it. The cars are not going to be parked in Green Lane car park all day. Okay? 15. Well, that would generate enough income for the council. We shouldn't be worrying about that. And 15, there's always 15 spaces left in that car park, and I travel past it every day. So it's really not an issue about parking spaces. It's a big car park and it never really gets full. So there's the first issue. The second issue is that for me is that you cannot turn in that area. It's impossible. The traffic flow to go in and out of that with the pinch point at the top, those spaces at the top will hardly ever be used. And I'm worried about the traffic. And I do, if people want to park on the double yellow line, well, then residents can come to this council and we'll put them first and we'll put red lines there so they won't be able to.
Okay, let's
just go there very clearly.
Take it simply. Yeah. At the moment, I don't see any takers for effectively what you're suggesting, which is that we would effectively come back for a vote on an amended condition which would turn the parking the other way up. But I'm not getting any traction on that, so we'll have to move down the other line, which is that members want to refuse this, which is where I'm going to go in a moment. Councillor Dillon. Yeah.
Before any alternative solution is discarded, I would add a further point to what I said earlier, that not only would an inspector try and find a solution, they may not agree all of the conditions and legal clauses officers are
that is always
suggesting.
The risk.
So there are risks going down a refusal path.
Okay. Are we noted, and thank you, James. That very valid. Councillor Dillon.
Just to comment on Councillor Higgins' comment on red lines, it'd have to be a TfL
Yes.
road.
Yes.
Or
TfL do govern that. Yeah. Okay. We have a situation at the moment where the committee have not voted to agree the officer recommendation. For those unfamiliar with the way this works, that doesn't automatically refuse the application at this stage, because members now have to make out a clear and concise grounds from which to overturn the application, and to the satisfaction of the legal officer on my left. I think I know what they're going to offer me in a moment. I would also, though, couch the head of planning's point that obviously you do have a robust report in front of you with lots of tie-ups and conditions in it. There's no guarantee that's what you get back from the planning inspector. We all know that. Planning inspector can red pen every condition if they want. I'm not saying they will, but they can. That's their option. Okay. Those who voted the other way, voted against this in a moment, are you saying to this committee, I mean, effectively last time this was refused on highway safety grounds, are you saying that the additional 6 spaces provided don't overcome that refusal reason? If I read it out for you, the previous refusal reason was the proposed use of premise as a nursery and primary school, and I think it should just have said nursery, not primary school, does not adequately provide on-site pick-up and drop-off facilities to the detriment of child safety, and fails to have regard for existing highway and pedestrian safety concerns. The proposed use will result in increase in parking stress in the surrounding area. It's also a subject to considerable pressure. And furthermore, the use of the Green Lane car park due to distance from the proposed nursery would result in car parking stress on the local highway network and would create an environment that would present a considerable hazard to pupils and other pedestrians and be disruptive to residents of neighbouring buildings. That was your refusal reason of 2nd of August. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Councillor Higgins.
I'll go with that there before you. I will go there before you, but I will stress that the inspectorate will come up with something different. So, those are the reasons for me putting what I put forward. And if the committee doesn't want to do it, that's fine. I don't lose sleep over it at all. But I will put that forward as the reason for refusal.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Yarra. We are effectively coming back to where we were on the 2nd of August. So I think members have made out a grounds for refusal. They have acknowledged the risks. Does the legal officer wish to offer me any advice at this point?
I will just set out what's already been said. So there will need to be strong refusal reasons overturning officer recommendation. You've heard from the highways officer, the agent, the applicant and the petitioner, and the application has changed. There's staggered start times, more car parking spaces and a car park, but with the information provided by local councillors, it does feel a legitimate refusal reason has been made out, but as the head of planning has said, the fallback position is that it will be used as a nursery for 60 spaces.
Okay, thank you. That is helpful. Members, you've heard the guidance from the legal officer. You've heard the head of planning's commentary. You've heard an alternative suggestion from Councillor Higgins, which didn't quite take off, but never mind. Okay, all those in favour of refusal now show. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the other 2 are abstaining, or are you against? 1 against, 1 abstaining. That one's refused then. Okay. Right, I move on. 7, Headside Road northwards, item 7. This was deferred from this committee on the 3rd of October over some discrepancies in the report which have now been clarified. Edward, will you take us through the salient points of this one, please?
Thank you, Chair and members. Item 7, Headside Road. If I could draw your attention to the presentation slides. We have the location plan. The constraints plan. Another location plan. And the site plan. This is a ground floor plan, existing. Members, ground floor plan, existing and proposed. And then you have the first floor plan, existing and proposed. This is the roof plan as proposed. A contextual plan. The previously refused front and rear elevation. The front and rear elevation. And the previously refused side elevation. You have flank elevations, proposed and existing. This is an aerial view of the subject site. And this is a street view of the subject property. Another street view. And members, this is effectively in relation to the notes in the addendum. What you have is officers took a photograph with a measuring tape, effectively, just to highlight the points about gaps. You have a photo of the boundary and the gaps between the subject building and the adjacent dwelling. Another view. The rear, the subject property. Another rear view. Side view. This is the rear garden. Members, the key issue here is the effect of the proposal on the host dwelling. Whether or not there are adequate retention of the modest sky gap between the adjacent property and the subject building, and if this is detrimental. The officer's view is that there are adequate gaps between the modest sky gap and the adjacent property. The proposal is not detrimental. It has no detrimental amenity impact on anybody, and therefore it's recommended for approval.
Could I draw members' attention to the addendum on this one? Which I think, and the head of planning want to come in?
If I can just add a couple of quick clarifications. So what HDAS said is if you're doing a side extension, it should be at least 1 metre off the boundary if it's a new ground and first floor, but in this case it's just a first floor, so it's 1.5 metres is the gap, and the plans are indicating there'll be 1.5 metres set back from the first floor to the boundary. There has been a lot of correspondence regarding measurements, and I think what this is based on is that if the existing ground floor figure is wrong, then the neighbour's concern is that ditto the first floor would be wrong. Officers think that from the flank wall to the fence is 90 centimetres. My only thought process is that maybe the reason the neighbour's 75 is their measurement is to the eaves or the chimney or something slightly different from where officers are taking the measurement from, but we would do the main flank wall to the fence and wouldn't include any additions such as a chimney or the eaves detail. So just to clarify that point before the petitioner speaks.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Petitioner on this one, Ms. Christine Turnbull. Could you put the microphone on for me? Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christine Turnbull and I'm speaking on behalf of the lead petitioner, Mrs Kasam Ganji, who lives next door at number 9 Headside Road. This is a revised plans application and it merely confirms that the removal of a balcony and its obscured glazing and that the front porch is open. When we met this time last month, I made the point that these plans still constitute overdevelopment of a 4-bedroomed house into an 8-bedroomed house, and that they are still virtually identical plans to the refused application 2017-554. You upheld the officer's recommendation of refusal for that application on the grounds that the proposed part 2-storey, part single-storey side rear extension, by virtue of its size, scale, bulk, depth and proximity, would be detrimental to the amenities of the adjoining occupiers at 9 Headside Road by reason of over-dominance, overshadowing, visual intrusion, loss of light and loss of outlook. In response to those grounds for refusal, this current application shows that the ground floor footprint has been reduced by just 9 square metres, which is hardly anything, and no effort or no changes have been made to scale back the double-storey element. So I ask you, honestly, does that really satisfy the concerns raised and the grounds for refusal? The 2-storey side extension remains the same. It takes away the cat slide roof and closes up the gap between 7 and 9 Headside Road. It is incongruous and over-dominant to 9 Headside Road and is detrimental to the street scene. I still believe that the gap between 7 and 9 Headside Road is disputable. I believe perhaps our measurement of 75 centimetres was taken from the overhang to the boundary, but I believe that overhangs are included, or when it comes to boundaries, you take the measurement not from the main wall, but from an overhang or any protruding roof, because I've certainly come across that issue in the past. But the fact remains that 7 and 9 Headside Road are very, very, very close together. And this double-storey side extension closes up that gap, and it is incongruous, and it's like a bulk on the side of the house. The previous application was also refused on the grounds that the proposal would result in the provision of 2 habitable rooms with no outlook, natural light, sunlight or ventilation, resulting in an oppressive atmosphere for future occupants. In response to these grounds for refusal, this application has merely removed internal sliding doors to the reception room and the dining room. So I ask you again, does that really satisfy the reasons for the refusal on the last application? So I would also ask you to note that this proposal still includes the conversion of the garage to what could be used as a habitable space, which would result in, yet again, a room with no natural outlook, light, sunlight or ventilation. So in conclusion, I would ask the committee to consider in detail the grounds for refusal of the previous application, 2017-554, and to consider whether this application does enough to address those concerns. I do not believe they do. This application should be turned down on the grounds that the proposed 2-storey, part single, rear extension and double-storey side extension by virtue of size, scale, bulk and depth is detrimental to 9 Headside Road. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you very much. Can I just ask, you did mention that this house has a cat slide roof.
Yes.
Is that a feature on other properties in the road?
It is a feature of 9 Headside Road, is that right? Of your own house. The cat slide roof. Do you have a cat slide roof?
Do we?
Sorry, from memory I just can't.
No.
We go back.
Okay, we'll look at the photos. I think we'll make our judgment from that.
Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you very much. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant for this one wishing to speak? If you just give your name for the record so that we can...
My name is Butler of A. Butler and Partners. We're the agents acting on behalf of Mrs. Patel, the owner of 7 Headside Road. Since the committee meeting held on the 3rd of October, we have taken the opportunity of clarifying any unclear details so there can be no misunderstanding of what is shown on the drawings. The proposed right side alteration to the extension retains the existing 900 millimetres as measured from the face of the wall to the boundary line, and the dimension from face to face of the wall 7 to 9 is 1300. At first floor level, the proposed setback would make it 1500 to the boundary line. The proposed rear extension on the right side has been set back to conform with planning requirements in respect of the 45-degree sight line. We have also taken on board the councillors' objections during the meeting on the 3rd of October, and the balcony to the rear has been removed. The porch, as has now been shown to be open-sided, as it was always intended to be.
That was clarification in the drawings.
We have actually, we can refer to drawing numbers which will show these details, if that's of use to the councillors.
they are there. I've seen
You
them.
see them, right. The number of bedrooms stated by the petitioner is incorrect. There are actually only 6 bedrooms, 5 at first floor and 1 at ground floor, which has been introduced in order to assist Mrs. Patel's husband, who is in a poorly condition and who is unable to deal with the flight of stairs to first floor. So in fact there are only 6 bedrooms, not 8. We have made minor changes to the front access into the building for ease of driving into it, and that can be shown on the drawings.
There's already adequate parking.
There's actually room for 3 car parks, and there was originally room for 3 cars for parking. The rear garden is quite large, and the extension that is being proposed will still retain 90% of that garden area. And if there are any other questions that need to be asked, I will try to assist.
Do members have any questions? No? I think not.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You just turn the microphone off for me. Thank you very much. There are no ward councillors on this one, so who wants to take me out? Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chairman. I think it is overdevelopment and size and bulk, so that's where my stance is on this proposal.
We might have to amplify that in a moment, depending on others' views. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've looked through these plans very carefully, comparing what we had rejected last time round and what we have here. Other than the removal of a balcony and the frosted windows and the opening up of the porch, I cannot see any difference in size or bulk. In that case, I originally voted to reject it, and again I should be voting to reject it.
Let me just ask the Head of Planning for clarification on what has changed, because that is material.
The applicant's clarified the 45-degree line, and that's quite important, because that then shows us that that the impact is acceptable, and I'm referencing page 172 in this regard, that shows both number 7 and number 9, and that then demonstrates to us that there is an acceptable neighbour impact. And then the other key criteria relates to visual amenity is the gap, and the applicant's clarified that the 1.5 metres is met.
What is the difference in size terms between this and what was refused last year?
It's been more of a tidying up of the elevations.
And what was the refusal reason last time out? Just to be clear. I've forgotten what it is. No, we deferred it, but what we're reverting back to is the previous scheme that was refused by this council. No debate from the floor. I did make that absolutely clear when I started. We deferred this scheme, but the petitioners have referred us to a previous scheme when it was, the argument is that's very similar. So that it's a valid consideration. Proposed detrimental impact on the amenities of number 9 by virtue of over-dominance, visual inclusion, loss of outlook was the grounds last time out. Okay. Please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad the porch bit part has been clarified and the balcony is gone, and we've had clarification on the boundary lines. So I believe it to be in policy. It's bigger than sort of one would like, but it's in policy, and I see no reason to refuse it. So I would move officers' recommendation.
Okay. I think there was a great deal in what you've just said. Because at the moment I haven't heard a clear reason not, but Councillor Oswald?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it is in policy. I know it doesn't sit too well, but it's in policy, so I'll second the mover. Thanks, Chairman.
Any other views on this one before I move it forward? I know, Councillor Higgins, you take a different view.
Thank you,
Chair. Are you going to expand on your different view?
For me, if we have a look at the actual drawings, it's the fact that the bulk is about, on both sides of the property, that the outlook is this massive brick building as you walk out of your rear garden and you're faced with this monstrosity next to you. And that's the reason for me. It's a lack of outlook there. And if you can see that on the plans, it shows the side elevations are a lot bigger than what they should be, and that's my view on this.
Okay. We've got a number of members who haven't said a word yet, so I might just like to hear from a few more people before I push this to a vote. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask? We've heard mention of this distance from the side boundary, and that it does actually meet our policy. Looking at the map of the area, it does seem that there are some properties that are quite close to boundaries, although there are other properties where there are larger gaps between them. So it does seem to be mixed in this respect. Is that correct?
If I can... I think the problem we've got here is that, I'm going to be frank, the first time this came to committee, there was a lot of concern about plan discrepancies and the quality of the plans before committee, and now we've got plans that I think are clear, and it's now clear that it's a policy and compliance scheme. So whereas at a previous committee, I didn't, as a head of planning, seek to give a strong steer to committee, I feel I have to tonight, that this is a street scene that has a number of substantial properties. It's not in an area of special local character. You've got a scheme that's fully compliant with our policy in HDAS. So I don't think there is now a refusal reason here. I really don't.
Okay. Councillor Flynn, contribution?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, with some reluctance, I have to say I do worry about our chances if this gets appealed, because it's pretty clear that it is within policy, and you've heard the head of planning's commentary on refusal reasons. It's not a particularly attractive scheme, but my concern is that this could go the wrong way. So I have some sympathy with those who have put the recommendation before you. So that's really where I'm sitting.
Councillor Graham? I didn't indicate. No, I know. But I'm trying to get people off the fence here for a minute. if you don't mind. Are you? Well, I'm going to come to you as well. Where are you on this one?
I'm tending to go in favour of it this time.
Okay. Councillor Yarra.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as I said before, the last one, I wasn't at that meeting when decisions were taken concerning this property. If they have done what they said they were going to do because of the problems from the last meeting, and it is now, in the officer's words, compliant, I don't think there's any alternative but to say that it should be approved.
Thank you. I think it does appear as if it is within policy and that we would be struggling to find refusal grounds. Okay, I've had a proposer and a seconder for officer recommendations. We do need to tweak conditions on this one. An obscure glazing condition does need to go in, doesn't it?
Yeah, there's a side bathroom window and there's a roof light that both face the neighbouring properties. So if members wish them obscure glaze, we would need to add a condition to that effect.
Can we note that request? Councillor Dillon, was there anything else?
And I haven't seen it, but I may have missed it. A condition that the garage cannot be converted into habitable space or room.
If it's not in there, it's not in there, I know. Do we want that? Would you be recommending that? Yeah? You'd be happy with that?
I wouldn't have any objection to it.
Right. In that case, I think it's a perfectly sensible suggestion from Councillor Dillon. Yeah, right. So we've had a couple of changes to the officer report in terms of additional conditions, but apart from that, the proposal before us is to approve the officer report. All those in favour, please clearly show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against, please show. Those abstaining is 2. So 6-2, that one goes through. Thank you very much indeed. I move on. 51 Weiland Road, Northwood.
Excuse me, Chairman, can I have a comfort break for just 1 second? I'll step out of this application.
Yeah, okay. So we'll move on whilst you have your comfort break. Could you turn your microphone off so that we don't... Okay, Edward, would you take us through? Come on. 51 Weiland Road.
Thank you, Chair. 51 Weiland Road, Chair, is a proposal for a 3-storey, 7-bed detached dwelling house with habitable basement and roof space involving the demolition of the existing dwelling house. If I could take members through the presentation for this particular item. You have the location plan, the constraints plan, another location plan, and this is the existing site plan. Proposed site plan, existing ground floor plan, existing first floor plan, existing elevations, existing side elevations, and the proposed basement floor plan. Proposed ground floor plan, proposed first floor plan, and the proposed second floor plan. These are the proposed elevations. The proposed side elevations. An aerial view of the subject site. Street view of the subject property. Another street view. The rear of the subject property. another rear view. Members, the key issue in considering item 8 is whether or not the proposal is an incongruous addition to the street scene, and secondly, whether the proposal results in a cramped form of development detrimental to the character of the area. The area, members should note, is an area of special local character. The officer recommendation is that the proposal be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, before we take this application, the Head of Planning has drawn my attention to the fact that the basement plan you've just been shown is not the correct one. We believe that we do have the correct one, so I'm going to adjourn temporarily in order that we can get that, so we've got the right set of plans before us. So, apologies, but it is important that we are considering the correct plans. Okay, the Democratic Services did have copies of the right version with them, so they will circulate those to committee now, and we'll put one on the petitioner's table, so we're all clear. Yeah. And the Head of Planning will just talk you through the changes in the basement plan. Right, okay, if I can resume, the Head of Planning will just talk you through the minor changes to the basement plan, and then we roll.
Yeah. So we have a replacement dwelling that I'm sure the petitioners and applicant and agent will comment on the merits of that, and the reason that's refused is clearly set out in the officer report. However, the issue officers had with the basement was that it included in the original plans a self-contained residential units for
maybe for staff or for
whoever that might be, a self-contained unit, but officers took the view that that was completely unacceptable because there'd be no daylight, sunlight, outlook from windows, etc. So basically the alternative plan has an entirely leisure use of the ground floor. That's what effectively it is showing you. So there is no longer a self-contained residential unit in the basement. The effect of that is set out in the addendum sheet, because what it means is that officers' concerns regarding that self-contained unit as set out in refusal reasons 2 and 3 no longer apply. The slight confusion is this is a late plan. The reason I think it doesn't prejudice any parties by us accepting this late plan is that the representations from local residents have either been concerning the above ground development, which is unchanged, or if they have commented on the basement, it's been related to the principle and scale of the basement, which is not changed. All that's happened is that the internal layout of the basement has changed to remove the self-contained residential units. Hence the changes to the committee recommendation as set out in the addendum, I don't feel prejudice any parties. Thank you, Chairman.
Good. I think that's clear for all. Christine, I'll take the petition on this one now. Christine Turnbull. Can we ensure that anything that's coming to us, please, also given to the applicant and their agent, because in the interest of fairness?
If you want to share, I bought 12 copies.
I just need one. I need one for the agent and the applicant. That's all.
Okay, I'll put one on the table.
Okay, can we move on, please? Because there's a lot still on this agenda yet.
Good evening, Chairman, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christine Turnbull and I'm speaking on behalf of the Gatehill Residents Association. This latest application to demolish 51 Weiland Road, dig out a 350 square metre habitable basement and build an enormous three-storey house on top is a new application and should stand or fall on its own merits. These new plans for the basement, I'm not sure if they were actually posted on the website, so not sure if they actually do constitute part of this new application. The Gatehill Farm Estate consists of modest 4 to 5 bedroom detached houses in spacious surroundings with an arts and crafts feel. The handout shows you just how large and block-like this house and basement proposals are in the context of neighbours 49 and 53 Weiland Road and the wider Gatehill Farm Estate. We agree with the officer's design and appearance grounds for refusal, as there is nothing remotely like this on the Gatehill estate, despite what the applicant may try to convince you. However, the GRA would like you to add the following additional reasons for refusal, because I believe the phrase of the evening is not in policy. So we have at least 6 or 8 points of things that are not in policy about this application that we would like included in a refusal. Firstly, this proposal constitutes overdevelopment. Even with today's amendment altering the underground annex to become 2 large storerooms, it could easily still be inhabited by up to 12 people, and it seems like a small hotel or a house in multiple occupancy. The size, scale and bulk as a result of the design and the 3rd-storey crown roof is not in policy. The minimum 1.5 boundary rule for new developments in the Gatehill Farm Estate has been ignored. This contributes to the visually cramped appearance of the proposals. This is not in policy. The basement has double the footprint of the house. Emerging policy DMHD3 states that proposals for subterranean development, which would extend the full length or the full width of a property, will not be supported. So the plans again are not in policy. There is a flooding risk as the proposal takes no account of the management of surface water and a stream at the bottom of the garden. Previous advice from the Council's flood and water management specialist has been ignored, and a new flood risk attenuation strategy has not been submitted, so it's not in policy. The applicant has completed Certificate A stating that he owns all the land on the application. Whilst the site location plan is correct, his proposed site plan incorrectly shows ownership of the verges. Certificate B should have been completed and notices made, so this invalidates the application. There is also a lack of 25% soft landscaping on the applicant. There is a lack of 25% soft landscaping on the applicant's land because he has given it over to accommodate cars, as you can see on the diagram handout. The applicant cannot include GRA-owned land as part of his plans, and the roof lights to the proposed basement are not soft landscaping. So the 25% greenery policy has not been adhered to. It's not in policy. As the actual frontage has been reduced, the applicant has also included parking on GRA-owned land to accommodate parking. Are 2 spaces really enough for a household of this size, we ask? In addition, parking on GRA verges is not permitted as it constitutes a safe zone for pedestrians. So on the handout, these are our additional points for refusal. And I would just remind you that Councillor Bianco has spoken recently to the committee about both basements and overdevelopment on 2 separate occasions in connection with the Gatehill Farm Estate. and in each case he was against such activities. So in case this planning application, like others before it, go to appeal, the GRA asks the committee to unanimously refuse it and asks the committee to also be robust in their refusal by adding our additional reasons listed on the handout, thus making them material to any planning inspector considering an appeal. Thank you for listening.
Do members have any comments? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if there are any crown roof developments on this road or on the Gate Hill estate? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The applicant or their agent, whoever's... Rebecca Greasley, if I can read my colleague's handwriting. It's nearly as bad as mine. When you're ready, and then we'll kick off. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of the application for the replacement dwelling at 51 Weiland Road. The application site has been subject to a number of planning applications. These are material considerations in determining the current scheme on the site. The most relevant applications are considered to be the extant permission on the site for extensions and alterations, including a 2-storey rear extension, the construction of a basement and loft conversion. This scheme was approved in April 2015. This is an important consideration as the principle of the site accommodating more built form has already been established. The other important material consideration in determining the current scheme is the recently refused application for a replacement dwelling on the site. This scheme was refused on the 14th of March 2017 as a result of the design and appearance of the proposed dwelling. As a result of the previous reason for refusal, the design of the development has been revised, removing the Georgian-style portico elements and the fenestration details, including the windows and front door, which have been amended to reflect a more modern and contemporary design. The fenestration details proposed in the replacement dwelling on the site are evident in the immediate locality. The street scene of Weiland Road is eclectic, and there is no prevailing pattern of development in the vicinity. The street comprises a mixture of residential dwellings of various sizes, design and external materials. In reviewing a number of previously approved applications in the vicinity, it is clear that dwellings of a contemporary design have been considered acceptable in the street scene. At 33 Weiland Road, permission was approved for the scheme that draws on a number of the design elements evident in the current scheme before members this evening. This scheme was approved against the current adopted policies. The first reason for refusal, as detailed within the officer recommendation, relates to the dwelling appearing as a cramped development. The current scheme proposes a form of development that would be partly within the footprint of the existing form of development on the site. The proposed replacement dwelling would measure 0.7 metres from number 53 Weiland Road and at a distance of 1.5 metres from 49 Weiland Road. The distance between the proposed development would be comparable to that of neighbouring properties. The current dwelling on the site is located 0.4 metres from 49 Weiland Road and 0.5 metres from 53 Weiland Road. Therefore, the proposed siting of the replacement dwelling on the site is considered to improve the cramped appearance of the dwelling within the street scene, providing a wider gap between the new form of development and the neighbouring properties. The concerns raised by officers in relation to the cramped appearance of the replacement dwelling is therefore not considered to be justified given the proposed siting and distance between the neighbouring properties and the current dwelling on the sites. And then if I can just turn to the handout that you've just been given. So there's a couple of points that have been raised. So overdevelopment, size, scale and bulk of the scheme. It's considered that I've adequately addressed this. The development is considered to be of a comparable scale to the extent permission on the site. Point 3, the non-adherence to the 1.5 metre boundary rule. We should be considering whether the development would result in demonstrable harm when compared to the existing and extant permission on the site, and in this instance this is considered to be improved. In terms of the flood risk, the officer has confirmed that this can be met by an appropriately worded condition. Point 6, the invalid certificate. The location plan shows that this verge does not form part of the application site and therefore this is correct. In terms of landscaping, this is considered to be appropriate in the context of the site. In terms of the car parking, this is considered to also be appropriate, and the officer has raised no concern in relation to the car parking provision. So, in summary of the points raised, it is requested that members have regard to the extant permission on the site in determining the appropriateness of the scale and bulk and the appearance of other dwellings in the immediate vicinity in terms of the design of the replacement dwelling. It is therefore requested that members of the committee approve the application for a replacement dwelling at 51 Weiland Road, contrary to the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Members have any questions? Councillor Flynn?
Thank you for your presentation. You said that the footprint for this proposed new dwelling is the same as the footprint for the existing dwelling. Is that true of the basement, or does that protrude beyond the footprint of the existing dwelling?
The basement does, but there's an extant permission for a basement on the site, which has obviously been approved.
Okay. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any other crown roofs in the area?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but there is an eclectic street scene of varying roof forms and designs, so it wouldn't appear at odds with that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we're done. There are, Councillor Bianco is unable to be with us tonight as he has a prior engagement. He did drop me an email earlier in the week to say he fully supports the officer recommendation for refusal. So that clarifies that. I'll open it for debate. I'll ask the Head of Planning to comment on the suggestions for additional refusal reasons. I think we need to deal with that first. Perhaps you would comment on the proposed, whatever, 6, 7?
So, what I'd firstly say is the handout circulated is basically two sets of policies, those that relate to our safe policies, UDP, that we're currently using, and emerging policies that this council isn't yet using. So we're not refusing applications relating to emerging policies. So that immediately takes out number 4, because there isn't the basement policy. There is a basement policy in the emerging plan, but that we're not using that yet. So, in terms of basements and flood risk, the council's flood and water management officer has would require further documentation for this to be acceptable, but is satisfied that through condition we can get further documentation. I think is the simplest way I can answer that particular question. There has been crown roofs, as you mentioned various times. In page 59, at the end of paragraph 7.03, we've drawn members' attention to an appeal decision in the Gateshill estate, and there's a couple of points I made regarding the crown roofs. They are not a characteristic of the Gateshill estate. There may be appeal decisions on the Coxford estate regarding crown roofs that have had some bearing on the architectural character of that area's special local character, but the Gateshill estate thus far has not suffered from crown roofs. And that particular appeal inspector had a major issue with the concept of a large crown roof and said it was patently unsuitable for this area of special local character. So the inspector didn't mince their words on that particular proposal. So there is an issue with crown roofs, and the council could, that could be added to strengthen refusal reason number 1, in my view, because it is a problem with the development proposal, and I think there is a reason why it has been raised various times this evening. In terms of overdevelopment of the site, this is a family dwelling house, so the problem is that because it's so big it has an adverse impact on the street scene, but there is no reason I think we can refuse it because it's simply got a large number of bedrooms and bathrooms. So I think it does all boil down to the first refusal reason, and then I think it's really for committee to consider whether we should be strengthening that. What I would say is before members make a decision, I'd like to have delegated authority to correct any spelling errors, because unfortunately there is a couple of spelling errors I've spotted, but I'm satisfied that I do know how to spell detrimental in character, so I will correct those before any decision is made.
Okay, let me start off on this one. I'm going to do a slight reversal for this time out. Is there anybody that's going to make any argument that suggests that they don't want to go with the officer report on this one? If anyone is about to go, good, okay. I need to understand where we're going. Is anybody going to argue for strengthening refusal reason 1, which I think is where we might go? Councillor Oswald. Oh, I'll go down the list.
Thank you very much. Just for those reasons, Chairman, if we can strengthen this for refusal, I would certainly move the officer's recommendation, because I don't understand how developers and architects can give us a proposal that says that there's 2 habitable rooms with no outlook, natural light, sunlight.
They have corrected that bit. They've corrected that bit.
Oh, sorry about
that.
That's
the bit they have corrected.
Okay.
The rest of it remains.
If we can strengthen this up some way that helps us with a refusal, I'll move the officer's recommendations for refusal with anything that we can strengthen it up with. If you want to do a form of words outside of this meeting between yourself and me, that's
that may well be where we go in a moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Dillon, is that where you were? Yeah, Councillor Duncan. Then I'll come down.
Thank you. Yes, I am concerned about the very large ground roof, because they do dramatically affect a street scene, even if a road has, hedges, so that you don't see quite so much of the ground floor, and sometimes even the first floor. Usually you do see the roof line of roads. Maybe people don't look at them very much, but it does have quite a dramatic effect, and I do think that crown roofs do not appear to be part of the character of this estate.
Well, I think the head of planning has confirmed that.
And when that was suggested, I would propose that we strengthen it with something around that. The other thing I wanted to ask about was the car parking provision, which appears to have been made on land which is controlled by the trustees of the Gatehill estate, who do not allow parking on that land. So has that been taken into account?
James, Edward, whoever's got the detail. Then
the slight difficulty in this case is after we published the report, there was further, obviously, submissions from the applicant. The key one being the plan that we have circulated to councillors.
I think the councillor's question was, is the car parking as shown within the area owned by the applicant?
So there is a verge between the highway and there's a verge section owned by the Gatehill Residents Association. So there's enough space to park vehicles, enough vehicles off the highway. In terms of, it depends on which plan that you're referring to. So my understanding is that is what the planning agent was saying is that they've clarified that it's not their intention to do any development outside of land in their ownership.
Okay, I'll take a hold on that for a minute, if I might, because I have a suggestion for that. And then I'm going Councillor Flynn, Councillor Morgan. I don't think I've missed anybody else. If I have, apologies. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very perfectly happy for the head of planning to draft up the refusal reasons here, but I thought it was very helpful that he pointed out the commentary from the planning inspector on the previous Gatehill estate application, referenced the final paragraph of 703 on page 59. When he drafts his refusal reasons, it'd be quite a lot of the things in that paragraph actually are the sort of things I'd like to see in the refusal reasons. I think that really very neatly summarises a lot of the issues here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've just got one little comment to make on this. That, okay, with the amended plan for the basement, that room could still be converted into accommodation.
We have to take what we're being given.
So, if the scheme had been deemed acceptable, I think we could have conditioned to ensure the basement was only used as a leisure area and didn't have any annexes introduced into it.
So we can't, that can be dealt with. So, I think the proposal before us is that the head of planning, to be approved by myself and the Labour lead, redrafts the reason for refusal, to definitely take into account Crown roofs and also the previous inspector's appeal commentary. I would also suggest, as there's just a little doubt floating around in my head, that we just absolutely double check that the landscaping and car parking proposed does meet policy on land that the applicant actually owns, because we had a lot of toing and froing on this estate about who owns what. Because if I have great sympathy with petitioners in terms of levels of car parking, but as I'm afraid everybody does know, regardless of the size of the house, you get to 2 spaces, and I'm afraid we don't have a valid reason for refusing it on that basis. We all have views on that, and many may not accord with that statement, but that is the position. But if that car parking can't be made on land that is owned by the applicant, and also allowing for the relevant level of landscaping, then that may raise further questions. But if I let the head of planning explore those matters, and then come back to us with his refusal reasons.
Yeah. So the part of the point the GRA are raising is whether 2 spaces is enough, but that's fully policy compliant.
No, I'm accepting
and
that.
it's possible to get 2 spaces without encroaching on GRA land. I'm satisfied with that as well. So it only becomes a matter of red lines on plans. It is all that is left in effect.
Yeah. So just if you double check that, then we're fine.
I think it's important I do sort of make clear at the committee meeting the kind of wording that would be in the refusal reason. So drawing from paragraph 7.03, the key words that I think are missing are the scale, the bulk, and the crown roof.
Yep.
So they would be the words
you'll be incorporating.
That I think would reflect the comments made by the councillor regarding taking into account what's on page 59, and taking into account the points raised by the petitioner. I think you could add scale, bulk and crown roof with respect to this proposal, so it would just be building words around those 3 key
I think
additional words.
That's going where we are.
I think it's the size of the crown roof as well. I mean, it may be that there are some properties that have a small crown roof that doesn't really read as such. This is so big, it does.
Okay, I think the points are well made. I think we're all in agreement. I have a proposal to accept the officer recommendation with the refusal reason to be redrafted, taking into account members' comments. Councillor Morgan.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. When you're looking at the who owns what on the frontage of the property, can you take that into consideration for the 25% landscaping that we normally go for on this?
Yeah,
because if they're relying on that piece of land, then obviously
I think the head of planning's view is that as long as the red lines are correct, those 2 matters are dealt with. But he can confirm the red lines are correct. Okay, if the red lines are not correct, those 2 matters may become incorrect. If the red line is correct, they are correct. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. Oh, right, okay. Oh, yes, because you weren't here for all of it. You took a comfort break. By the time we lost a set of plans, you could have been back. No, we didn't know that. Okay, I move on, please. Item 9, non-petition 18 Church Road Northward. Edward, could you take me through this one?
Thank you, Chair. Item 9, Chair. If I could draw members' attention to the site location plan shown on the screen. You have the constraints plan. the location plan and previously existing floor plans. Previously existing elevations. As-built floor and roof plans. As-built elevations. An aerial view of the subject site. Street view. A further street view showing the front of the property. The rear of the subject property. Another view of the rear. Members, the key issues for your consideration on this particular item is whether or not the proposed development is detrimental to the character of the host dwelling. And secondly, whether or not it has an adverse impact to the visual amenities of the street scene. And the officer's view is that this proposal does have a detrimental impact on the character of the host dwelling and an adverse impact on the visual amenities of the street scene, and therefore officers are recommending it for refusal.
For those who haven't worked out, this of course is a retrospective application. I thought you might have got there, but I just put that out for clarity. Councillor Higgins, I saw you first, then Councillor Dillon.
Yes, I'm going to go with officer's
Oh,
recommendation.
you're not?
Is there a surprise there? Straight away.
Councillor Dillon. Are you going to second that, or you got something
I think
else?
on balance, I'd agree with the officer's recommendation,
Do you?
and therefore second.
No, very good. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's refused. If I can move to item 10, I'm going to suggest on this one that we just move it forward on the basis that it already exists. It's a change of use from effectively A1 to a nail bar, but it's been there for 6 or 7 years already. And in my book, that is virtually a retail use. I know the planning class differs with me. Right, Councillor Higgins.
Go with officer's recommendation.
I'll second, Chairman.
Okay, all those in favour, please clearly show. Thank you. That one's done. I move to item 11, and I can't move this one rapidly. 5 and 7 King's End Ruislip. This will take us a little longer. Although the application before us, just for clarity, is in relation to 7 King's End.
That's right, yeah.
Although, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Chair. Item 11 is for two-storey, 3-bed detached house. We have the location plan, the constraints plan. Yeah. As you can see from the constraints plan, it is in the Ruislip conservation area. Another location plan, a block plan, a site plan again, further site plan, floor plans and front elevations, further elevation details,
Those are number 5 for reference only.
We've got reference plans from number 5 in here, as well as proposed plans for pair of dwellings number 7. So it's a bit hopscotch, I'm afraid.
Thank you, James. And you have some more details on the elevation.
That's 5 as well.
So that's the existing dwelling at
number 5.
Number 5, yeah.
An aerial view and some street views.
Okay, I've got hands everywhere.
Okay. Chair.
I'll let the officer finish his presentation.
Yeah. Chair, the key issue for consideration is whether or not the proposal is acceptable and in keeping with the character of the local area. And the officer recommendation is for approval.
James, do you want to
add
a
so, I've had off and on involvement in this site for at least the last 3 years, trying to get different developers and architects to put forward something appropriate on the site. Members were all aware that this was a bit of land left over when the Waitrose store was built. It's been derelict for a very long period of time. So what's effectively happening is number 5 is being retained. That building was in a better state and was considered by our conservation officer to be a greater architectural merit of the pair. And this is covered in detail in the report. Number 7 is in a very poor state of repair. So the proposal was initially to replace that with 3 dwellings. That was considered too cramped, and so the proposal is now for 2 dwellings on the site. And it's probably best if the officer goes back to the. If you want to put the front elevation plan. So the Council's Conservation Officer has been heavily involved in this. One of the problems you've got is that number 5, because it's an old property, its floor-to-ceiling heights are not normal floor-to-ceiling heights, the eaves to the ridge height. So it's basically become impossible to do a modern, well, not modern houses, because obviously architecturally you're trying to draw on the arts and crafts design, but you're still stuck with modern building standards to do the same eaves and ridge height. There is a small crown on this. There are a couple of other properties in King's End with crown roofs that are they're not the predominant form, but there are a couple that's referenced in the report. So the Council's Conservation Officers has reached a point where I know she's happy with every aspect, with the slight exception of there being a crown roof, but we've kind of reached the point that we think it's pretty much there, that this proposal, and that we're probably never going to tick every single box. And there are 1 or 2 other issues concerning the need through conditions to have acoustic fencing at the rear, and obviously have all the relevant material details submitted. But officers think that this is now an acceptable proposal in the conservation area, and it's basically taken about 3 years, to be honest, to reach this point.
Good. Councillor Oswald, I think you were first, then I think it's Councillor Higgins, from my memory.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I think this is a good application. I think that it's almost criminal the way that house has been left to fall into that state, and it must have been like that for something, I don't know, 15, 20 years, probably, something like that. I will say this, my dad did a lot of work in that house in the 1960s, so it was a little bit sad to see it go like that. But anyway, that's another matter. King's End is a lovely avenue of houses, spoilt ever so slightly by 1 or 2 blocks of flats, where we've had demolitions of nice houses and flats have been built, and it's been spoilt a little bit, but I think this is a good application. I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Higgins and Councillor Morgan.
There you go. Yes, I concur, and I hope that the standard of the building is up to John's father's standard. And I think it's really lovely to see a development for the first time that I think, wow, I wouldn't mind living in that. So, and I think the crown roof works because it is 2 semis, and I think that eliminates that thing. So I will second that.
Okay, I'll take Councillor Morgan unless there's anyone's got anything different.
I'm not going to say much different. It's great to see a house being built rather than blocks of flats. It is something that we as a borough are looking for, and great to see, and has my full support.
Okay, I draw members' attention to some tidying up of conditions in the addendum, but it doesn't materially change what's there. It just makes them tidier and neater, removes some unnecessary bits, and tidies them up, and adds a subject condition which should have been there anyway. So subject to all of that, we have a proposer and a seconder to approve this one. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That one's approved. Right, we move to item 12.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, item 12 is a retrospective application. Effectively for a car wash and car sales. And I'll take members through the slide presentation, the location plan. You've got the constraints plan. A site plan as existing. Site plan as proposed. An aerial view of the subject site. A street view of the subject site with the cars parked for sale. Further street views. Chair, officer's recommendation is that the item be approved. It's not deemed to be detrimental to the character of the local area.
Okay. The history of this site, for those who probably do know it, this has had cars sold on it before. It then became a car wash, and now we've got car wash and cars. Somebody's battery's about to go. But we're all right because we won't need it much longer. So we need it for. We will need it. I need it for the photos. I think I draw members' attention to the key condition, which is number 2, which limits the number of cars on site to 12. Because the key consideration here would be any overspill of cars onto the highway. Whilst they're on this site, I don't think there's any issues. But that's your key bit. Councillor Higgins.
Yes, I'll go with officer's recommendation. I mean, the reason that this was refused many times before wasn't because they sold cars, it was because they wanted them to come back and use it as a taxi service, which we would refuse that if it did happen. But apart from that, I will go with officer's recommendation.
Councillor Morgan, are you seconding?
I'm seconding.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That one's approved. Right, that is the end of the public part of the meeting. Can I now ask, please, that the... Oh, no, so there's one more bit in the public part before I do it. Can I ask people to note agenda item 13? Noted. Right, now can I ask for the YouTube feed to be switched off, please?
So we can all undo our shirt.
Agenda item 13. This is about 106.